Good evening, everybody. I can see that everybody's joining. I appreciate you guys coming over. We're going to wait a minute or two to make sure that everybody's here so I don't have to repeat anything or nobody misses anything of what I'm going to be presenting. It's going to be an hour and a half, probably. I got tons of stuff to share with you. I want to make sure that I'm as clear as possible. There's a lot of questions that are probably not going to be answered because this is a very deep and very extensive subject. I try to put some slides together that are more indicative or informative than actually putting a lot of wording. But let me wait just 1 or 2 more minutes to make sure that everybody's here. Lots of people signed up, which I really appreciated, and I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day, especially at 6:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Uh, we typically have great things to do at that time, like dinner with the family or being with the kids and what have you. And the fact that you chose to be here, I really appreciate it, and I want to make sure that I don't make you waste your time. But in the meantime, I'll wait 1 more minute. Let's say it's 6:31. I'll wait 1 or 2 more minutes. I want to be respectful of your time, but also understand that it takes sometimes a little bit of a while to get your Zoom on. I'm here in Orlando, Florida today. I'm actually in a hotel in a Sheraton, so I don't have my usual lights and everything. So I apologize for that. I hope you can see me okay. And if you can't, it doesn't really matter because what's important is the slides that I'm going to be sharing with you, not my face. So let's see. Oh, what? Lots of people coming, and I appreciate you guys coming. I really, really do. I worked a lot on this presentation. I want it to be perfect. Those of you who know me, I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I'm never satisfied with what I do. But don't try not to criticize this too much and enjoy it. And I'll do the same. Okay, so I'll enjoy these minutes that we have together. So let's see, it's 6:33, 1 more minute, and we're going to get started with the presentation. The weather here was pretty good. I've been driving all over Florida. Those who follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook know that this week I'm putting over 1,600 miles in my car. It's time to probably change it very soon. It's pretty old too. So visiting different roofing companies all over Florida, from Jacksonville to Pensacola to Orlando, back home at the end of this couple of days, meeting amazing people, roofing business owners from different types of companies, commercial and residential as well. Well, I guess I can get started. It's 6:34. I really don't want to make you waste your time. Let's get started with the presentation. So let's get started with a little bit of housekeeping, okay? First of all, I want to make sure that you understand this is going to be a relaxed and informal presentation. I do not want to make it very formal or very monotonous. This doesn't mean that the information is less important or serious. Actually, if you think about it, John Cleese said once, "He who laughs most learns the best." And to be honest, I know that I have to keep you with me for an hour and a half. So if I am very monotonous and very boring, you guys are going to leave and are going to miss part of what I want to share today. So I'm not going to make it very formal. I'm going to make it relaxed because I am actually a kind of a relaxed guy. I don't like formality that much. But I do want to be serious about the aspects of what we're going to be talking today. A little bit more of housekeeping. If you fall asleep, please raise your hand. I'll tell you a joke and I'll wake you up. I don't want to. I don't want you to be sleeping. Christian, okay, it's too early to to fall asleep. It's only been 5 minutes. So give me some time. But seriously, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A, okay? And I'm going to be checking the Q&A every so often to see if anybody has any questions or comments to discuss. Okay. A disclaimer, of course, I want you to know that the presentation is for illustrative and educational purposes only. It provides a simplified demonstration of the process of selling a business and its nuances and potential issues. I'm not going to go deep into everything. I'm not going to give any advice. I'm just here to discuss this. And many people that are in this presentation today are extremely and very, very well versed on the process of buying or selling a business. So I want to make sure I don't get in trouble. Okay, but before we go any further, I published this presentation or webinar trying to bring the idea of thinking differently. And I am a very big fan of finding different ways of doing things. I hate the status quo. I hate to just do the same thing over and over again and expect some, different results. So, for the foreword for this presentation, I chose what Steve Jobs said once, and basically that, first of all, let me thank you for coming to my webinar. I'm going to have some roofing business owners in the webinar. I have private equity members in the webinar. I have several strategic partners that are working with me here. I have several influencers that are in social media that are attending. Some podcasters, and many of my colleagues are also here. There's over 100 people that sign up for the webinar. So I'm really happy for this. And by the way, this is going to be the first one. I really want to start doing webinars to explain how this whole process works. Like I said before, this is going to be a very broad view of the whole process of selling a business. But in the future, I'm going to be digging deeper into different aspects of this. Because I believe that a business owner that actually knows how to sell his business has a much better chance of doing it correctly. But having said all this, today I had a great meeting with Patrick Carr, and I just wanted to bring him up here. This picture was taken this morning. We had a fantastic time with him. I met him just last week over Facebook, and he invited me to his podcast. Patrick is relaunching his podcast to recently, and I think I was the second guy that actually was invited there. So Patrick, I know that you're there. I appreciate it very much, and you'll see that many of the things that we talked about in your podcast are going to show up in some of my slides, the ones that I put at the last minute, because I've been working on these slides for the until the last minute. So having said that, this is what I wanted to say. To me, this is one of the most inspiring quotes that I can ever think of. It says, "Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing that you can't do is to ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." And this, of course, was Steve Jobs' quote. And I wanted to put it as a preface to this meeting because I really want to think out of the box and come up with ideas with everybody in the group. So at the end of this webinar, you should expect to understand the importance of always being ready to sell, know what being ready to sell actually means, know why 80% of businesses are not sold and what you can do to beat the odds. Know the steps of a sell and what are the riskiest steps. And at the end of the day, how to maximize the price of your business by thinking differently. So if we go to the number 3, know why 80% of the businesses are not sold. This is actual statistics. Maybe if you're in the roofing industry today, you feel like you're being sought after by many, many investors, and you think that's very easy to sell your business. But this statistic goes across um, industries and across places. Most of the businesses that are ever put to sell are not sold, and there's reasons for that, and I'm going to be talking about some of those reasons. So if you know those reasons, you can do something about it, and I hope you do. So in a nutshell, at the end of this webinar, you should have more questions than answers. If I did my job correctly, and if I actually gave you all the information that I'm going to give you in the next hour or so, I really think that you should leave this webinar with more questions than answers. That means that you really understand that you don't know enough of this process. But the questions that you're going to have are going to be a lot more intelligent, if you will, more knowledgeable of what the situation is, and deeper into the knowledge of what a business selling process looks like. So don't despair, because Voltaire said many years ago, I don't know how many years ago, that you should judge a man by his questions rather than his answers. As a father, I used to drive my daughter specifically crazy when we studied together, because every time she had one question for me and she asked me to help her with her um, with her homework, my answer was another question and maybe two or three. I think inquiring minds that are looking for different questions and digging deeper into the subjects are the ones that actually learn. And the idea of this whole webinar again is to start helping you ask those questions. Okay, so enough about you. Let's talk a little bit about me. Who is this guy, Claudio Vilas, and why should I listen to him? I know many of you know me. Not everybody does. So the ones that know me, you can skip a couple of slides. But just for the people who don't know who I am and what I do, I want you to know that I'm a guy that was born in Argentina way too many years ago. Actually, 59 years ago, a week or so ago. And I was an entrepreneur when I first started. When I was 18 years old, I started a business. The name of the business was called The American Way, and it was an English teaching institute. So I've always been a entrepreneur at heart. I love entrepreneurship. I think it's one of the driving forces, if not the driving force, of progress in the world. And I admire and I support every single entrepreneur out there, because I know what it means to be one. So for many years, from 18 to 26, I was an entrepreneur, and then I sold out to corporate and I joined J&J. In J&J, I started out as a sales rep, and I ended up as a big kahuna. I had a really nice career there. After I finished that career, I decided to move to business brokerage. And the reason for that is, again, because I do want to feel closer to the people who built a business, and honor them by helping them sell the business for the best price possible. So what I did is I became a certified M&A professional. And not to be too obnoxious, but just so you know, I got tons of different awards. All these awards were from last year, even the #1 top producer in Florida in 2023. So that's pretty much the reason why you can listen to me, and I do think I have some experience on this. From a roofing point of view, in the last 8 months, I sold Nolan's Roofing, I sold West Orange Roofing. I have 6 roofing contractors in my in my listings, and right now I have 1 under contract. They range between $5 million to $100 million in value. Okay, so now seriously, enough about me. You know who I am. I'm going to just give you a quick rundown of what I do. I want to define my job as empowering roofing business owners to create generational wealth and safeguard their legacies by attracting investors who will infuse capital, resources, and professional support to your companies. So I did promise you something, and that something is to think about things differently. So let's forget about roofing for a minute, and let's forget about selling a business for a minute, and let's start thinking about other things. Let's think about, for example, horse races. So if you think about a horse race, I would ask you, do you think you would be betting on a winning horse at the beginning of the race? Would you bet in the middle of the race, which is going to give you better chances to achieve, to earn money? Or will you bet on it at the end of the race when it already won? Of course, betting at the end of the race is the best strategy. It's actually an unfair advantage because you already won, so you're betting on a winning horse after it finished the race, right? Most people are going to be betting either at the beginning of the race or in the middle of the race. I don't think that's a good idea. I really think that you should be betting at the end of the race. And we're going to talk about how that works, but I think you can bet on a winning horse after it finished the race. Let me explain that for a minute. If you currently have a business that's making $1 million or more in earnings, if that business is over 10% in profitability, if your finances are in order, and if you have a stable and repeatable business, well, then you already have a winning horse. And the reason why you have a winning horse is because private equity, and the people who are listening can attest to this, are going to start seeing you in the radar screen. That's what private equity wants to buy. They want to buy a business that is over $1 million in earnings. Some of them, each private equity has their own parameters, but I would say that's a fair number to start, showing up in those radar screens. So if you already have the winning horse, it's a great idea to actually bet on it before it's too late. So let me dig a little bit deeper into this, okay? So imagine that you're standing right now on a wall. That wall is this is the Chinese wall, but this wall actually is dividing the past from the future. That wall is the present, okay? So we're constantly working on that present wall. Now, if we think about this for a minute, this picture is very nice. You have the left, the past, the right, the future. But in life, this doesn't happen. In life, the future doesn't really exist. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. So if you're a business owner and you're standing today on that wall, you don't know what's going to happen with your earnings in the future. You want to do a bet, and your bet should probably be on the present, and let your buyers bet on the future. So let me explain this a little bit more by talking about how a company is valued and how we can look at a valuation of a company from a different point of view. So if we simplify, and again, I have a lot of people out there that know how to do business valuation. I'm going to do this very simple math, okay? I'm not going to go into any methodology of valuation or anything, but the idea here is to just show a simple example on how things work. And at the end of the day, it's pretty accurate. So if you take your earnings from your company and you multiply them by a number, you get the business value. For example, if your earnings are $1 million and the multiplier is 5, your valuation is going to be $5 million. If your earnings are $2 million and the multiplier is 4, that's going to be $8 million. So basically, that's it. The multiplier, we're going to talk about the different parameters or the different variables that affect that multiplier. But at the end of the day, that's the way people will value your company. So let's think about this for a minute. So what is that multiplier and why does it exist? Why is there a multiplier over your earnings? The multiplier actually is a measure of risk. The lower the risk, the higher the multiplier. And vice versa, the higher the risk, the lower the multiplier. So a company that is in an industry that is not very risky has a higher multiplier. A company that's well organized has a higher multiplier. A company where the processes are organized and they are written and they're documented has a higher multiplier. Okay, so that multiplier actually is based on profitability, earnings, business quality, and business continuity. Okay, so within business quality, business continuity, we have a lot of things that actually make the business better, of a better quality and easier continuity. But if we look at earnings, earnings actually have a impact in the multiplier, because the higher the earnings of a company typically will also mean lower risk. A bigger company has lower risk than a smaller company because it has more continuity, because it has better management, because it has more time in the market, because it's more established, people know it better, and so forth. So there's a very, very wide rule of thumb. Again, don't take this as written in stone, but we can say that roughly companies that make less than $500,000 a year have a multiplier of 1. Companies that are between $5 and $1 million will have a multiplier that's going to go 2 to 3. Companies between $1 and $10 million, 4 and 7. More than $10 million, 8 and 10. And if it's higher, it's going to be a higher multiple as well. So this is very important, because if we look at the multiplier again as as the valuation or the driver for the valuation of the business, maybe we can look at it from a different way. So let's suppose we're in 2004, no, sorry, 2024, and we make this, each one of these little boxes will equal $1 million to make it easy for everybody to do the math, right? So I'm standing in 2024 today, and my company's making $1 million. I'm going to get a valuation for my company, and it's going to say that, okay, it's about $5 million, which means that I am taking 2024 and saying, or how can I put it? Well, I'm saying that it's going to stay the same for the next 5 years. So in the next 5 years, I should be making $1 million each year. That's 5 years into the future. So what I said before is that you're taking those earnings times 5, you're looking at those 5 years into the future, and you're bringing them into the present. So what I said before about standing in that wall that's dividing the present from the future, and you want to move to the present, this is exactly what I was meaning. That evaluation of a company is actually bringing future earnings, estimated future earnings, into today's number. Okay, so you don't have to wait 5 years to make all this money. You get it today when you sell it today. So that's basically how this works. And this is very important, and we're going to go over this concept a few more times. So let's go back to those years, and you can tell me, and I've had this conversation with many business owners as well, Claudia, yeah, sure. But you know what? I'm actually planning to grow 5% a year. Okay, so yeah, my earnings today are $1 million, but my plan is that next year is going to be a little bit more, the year after a little bit more, and so forth and so forth. And this is the graph that you get, 5% a year. And my question to you as you're doing your planning is, well, sure, I understand that's your plan, but how are you going to predict the next crisis? And let's think about the past for a minute. And of course, the past doesn't really predict the future, but it gives us a good idea. Let's suppose that it's not 2024, but it's the year 2000. And you have your plan for growth for the next 5 years. And all of a sudden, in 2001, we get the 9/11 crisis. Now your sales dropped, and you have to go back and rebuild your business again. I know some people might say, well, it didn't really affect my business, but the idea here is that there's going to be actions or there's going to be events that we can't really predict that are going to affect our price, our price and our valuation. So let's suppose that it's 2007, and you say, I'm going to be growing the next 5 years for 5%. So in 2008, we get the Ho's prices. Let's suppose it's not 2007. Let's suppose now that it's 2018, right before COVID. And here we go again with another crisis that, if all these crises have anything in common, is that they are completely unpredictable and they catch everybody by surprise. So the question I have now is, well, okay, so 2001, 2008, 2019, 2024, when will the next crisis be? Is it this year? We certainly have a lot of indicators that we could have a World War III. We have tons of issues politically. We have a lot of issues with the economy. You have no idea when this is going to happen. Maybe 25, 26, 27, or 28. Who knows? But the truth is that there will be a crisis. So if you bring your expected earnings from 5 years into the future, into today, no matter what happens, your money is already in the bank. But that's not all. There's another part to this, and it has to do with your personal life, okay? Now, if you think about your life and whether you were able to predict whatever crisis you can think of, like, for example, some kind of illness or a divorce or anything, you know that you couldn't have predicted it easy. So in business brokerage, we have the 5Ds, which are the reasons why people typically sell their business. And this is very important because these are the most common reasons for people to sell the business. The first D is the disagreement. So you have two partners, they disagree with each other, they want to break the business, and when you sell the business and you're not ready for it, you're not going to get the money that you want to get. So that's the number one. Number two is divorce. Many times, unfortunately, when a divorce comes, of course, you have to split your assets, and there goes the business with the divorce and everything else that you have. Number three is distress, the same business that is distressed. And unfortunately, these calls on, I got to sell my business because just can't afford to sell it anymore, are very, very common. And actually, it's one of the biggest reasons why people sell, and I'm going to talk about that in a few more minutes. Then we have disease, and this, I actually had a friend of mine who I sold his business for last about a year and a half ago. Unfortunately, he got cancer, and good thing is he actually survived the cancer, but he couldn't manage it anymore, and he had to sell it. So that's a very common reason for selling a business as well. And the final one is death. And I can give you, honestly, I can give you example of all of them. And unfortunately, the one about death is really sad. And we were talking about this with Patrick Carr today in his podcast. I had a call once from a 80-year-old guy that decided to retire and leave his business to his son. His son was about 40-some years old, and he was the one running his business for him. This business was like 40 years old or more. And the son was managing the business. This guy was retired for many years, but all of a sudden the son dies in a car accident, and he has to either take back the business or sell it. And he's in a very advanced age. He can't really manage the business, but he also couldn't sell it. There was no way to sell it because the business was just not ready for that. And he had to close the doors, and all his lifetime of work and effort just disappeared in a minute. So it doesn't have to be a crisis outside the world. It could be a crisis within your life. But those are the reasons, unfortunately, why most people sell their businesses. The truth is that you will exit your business. There's no way around it. You are going to exit your business. It's not a matter of if, it's really a matter of when. So let's look at that from a strategic perspective. strategically, you can sell your business when you want to or when you have to. And you can do it on your terms or on other people's terms. Of course, most people sell their business when they have to and on other people's terms. So they don't have much of a saying at that point. They have to sell it. There's no wiggle room. There's no negotiation room. And that's when you sell the business. That, of course, means you're going to get the least amount of money for it. Now, you're in this webinar because you're thinking of a plan of moving forward, of being the master of your own destiny. So this is where you're going to sell your business, and I can tell you that I'm sure that you will. It's either when you want to and in your terms, or if you have to, it can also be on your terms. Maybe you're not going to get the most out of it, but you're not going to be like most people, because you know after this webinar what it takes to actually sell the business on your terms. So waiting for the right moments. Waiting for the right moment can often mean missing the moment altogether. There's unseen risks and opportunities that rarely wait for the perfect time, making now the best time to act. This was actually a modern Argentine philosopher. I don't know if you know the guy. It's really well known, or it's getting very well known in the world. It's just a joke. I had a lot of fun putting these things together. I hope you like them, okay? And if you don't tell me. So let's think a little bit of what you actually are risking, okay? And this is no joke. When you're not planning, you're actually risking absolutely everything, because your business is your fortune is balancing. It's balancing on one number, which is the EBITDA. We just talked about multiplier, and if you multiply 5 by 1, it's 5, but if you multiply 5 by 0, it's 0. So if you sell your business when your business is losing money, you're literally not going to get anything for it. You probably can get some money for your for your assets, but you're not going to get much for the business as a business itself. So there's a big risk in having all your eggs in one basket. And unfortunately, many people find out about this when it's just too late. But wait a minute, Claudia, you're telling me that all this doom and gloom, it's Wednesday night, it's 7 in the afternoon, I'm here listening to you. I don't want to hear doom and gloom. Is there anything that you can tell me about capturing opportunities? Because my business is a great business, and my business is going to grow. In the next few years, I'm sure I'm going to grow. Okay, so let's look at it from the other point of view. We talked about doom and gloom. Now let's talk about roses and unicorns. So let's go back to where we were, where we have these earnings. As we know, each one of these little boxes is $1 million, and these are, what you're going to make in the future. So let's go back to where we were, where we bring the future into the present, and now we're getting all these boxes stacked on 2024. So what I just did was, again, to secure 5 years into the future today, okay? But like I said, if there's an opportunity, you don't want to miss out on it. So what do you do? Well, if you work with certain buyers, they will give you the option to reinvest part of what you just got into the new business. Now, mind you, you're not investing in the same business, because your business is now going to be part of a larger business that a private equity or an investor is going to have. So the new business, of course, is going to be a lot more stable than your business, for the simple reason that it's going to be a lot bigger, and it's going to be, typically more diversified. They have other businesses and so forth. So now you took a part of what you got now, and you put a few chips into the future of the business. So now you're going to get a percentage of the new business. And these guys' jobs is to actually grow the business. Nobody buys a business to, destroy it or to run it into the ground. Some people unfortunately do, but that's not their plan. Their plan is to grow the business. So you now are writing the new business, and you're able to obtain the earnings of that business without actually having to work on the business if you're just a shareholder. Of course, there's a lot of different deal structures that eventually I'm going to do a webinar specifically on deal structure. Like I said before, today's an idea to get you to see the whole picture. So now these going into 2029, it turns out that not only you got all this money in the back in the beginning, but you've been making money every month, every year, right? You're getting those earnings at whatever percentage that is. And if your buyer does a good job, within 5 years, your earnings, being a percentage of the bigger pie, will be similar to what your earnings were in 2024. That's, of course, in a good or best case scenario. But what happens? Now we're sitting in 2029, and in 2029, of course, we have future earnings. And again, there's going to be a multiplier. Now, this multiplier is probably going to be bigger than the original multiplier, because what we said before, now the company is much bigger and it's going to be sold to a bigger fish. So the multiplier, let's say, for example, it comes up to 6 or 7 figures. Okay. So this is what you look like in 2029. When the second, what they call second bite at the apple comes, you now are eligible to make as much or even more money than when you first sold your business. So let's do some math here. In the first instance, we got $5 million for the business. That's a multiplier of 5, okay? But you've been making money throughout these years. Let's suppose you do 0.2, 0.4, and 0.6, and 0.8. That adds another $2 million. And then when it's sold again, you can get a $7 million. And if we add it all up, you're basically getting $19 million for a business that originally was making $1 million a year. Again, these are illustrations. There's a lot of nuances to this, but it's important to think about it when you're thinking about selling your business and who's going to buy it, because you got to find people that are interested in buying and having these types of deals, right? Especially if you're a young guy, if you're not really thinking of retiring, if you really want to sell your business, but then keep working on it, because these numbers that are from 225 to 228 could be a percentage of the business, but also could be your salary if you stay working in it and if you still stay helping. So this is the way you can capture opportunity if you think that there's opportunity and you want to reinvest in the business. So let's see the different scenarios that we're looking at. And again, I have the little square here, and you can be optimistic or pessimistic, right? And you also can think of selling today or keeping your business. So let's go at the first quadrant. So the optimistic, the best of all worlds, you could be looking into about a $19 million payout within 5 years. The optimistic way of looking at your business would be about $7 million, because you would do $1 million a year plus a 5% growth. It's going to be average $7 million. But if the pessimistic scenario plays out, if you sell the business today and you keep the money today, no matter what happens in the future, you keep the money today. Of course, it's going to be dependent on the other investments that you make, but your business income is already in your pocket and nobody can take it away from you. Now, if you keep your business and for some horrible reason, something terrible happens, you could actually end up with nothing. Not only with nothing, you could actually end up with debt, because many people try to save their businesses and they got into debt to do so. So those are the scenarios, and it's something that you have to think about when you're thinking about selling your business, and when you're thinking about the value of your business as bringing future earnings into the present. So having said that, let's talk a little bit about human nature. Okay, if you follow me at all in LinkedIn, or I wake up many mornings just thinking about crazy stuff. And I promise you, I'm not on drugs. I don't drink in the morning. But for some reason, I get these crazy ideas, and I do think a lot about human nature. And I think that, if you think about human nature, uh, you need to understand that we all believe we're rational people. Everybody says, "Oh, I'm a rational person. I'm very rational." But the truth is that we're not that rational. Okay, so to understand, the first step towards becoming rational is to actually understand our fundamental irrationality. And I'm going to demonstrate to you, and I'm hoping that this example actually is clear enough, and you will agree to it, why I'm saying this. So let's look at a business growth, okay? So imagine this is your earnings through the last 4 years, and they've been growing year over year over year. So when a buyer looks at your business, what do you think he's going to think? Okay. Of course, he's going to think that that trend is going to continue. So he's going to want to buy your business. But the problem here is that you think it's going to continue as well, and you're not going to want to sell to him. So this first part is actually driven by the buyer's greed. And imagine this, and you've probably seen this over and over. If you're a little bit older, you've seen this over and over again in the markets. People buy stocks at the top right before they fall. And the reason for that is because they look at a trend and they say, "Oh, this stock is growing." Then it grows a little bit more and said, "Oh, I should have bought yesterday because now it's higher." And then it grows a little more and says, "Oh, damn it, I missed it. I gotta buy." And then it's like, "Oh my God, I really need to buy." And they go and buy it. And there's no reason or rationality there. It's just pure emotion. Okay. And even though we believe we're rational, we act on emotions. And this is one example. The problem is that both the buyer and the seller have the exact same um, uh, irrational behavior. Both of you believe that it's going to continue to grow. Now, if you think about it differently, you might say, "Hey, wait a minute. Uh, my business is growing, but I really don't know how much longer it's going to grow. I might want to sell now and keep some of the chips. And if it does continue to grow, fantastic, because I will be reinvesting. But if it doesn't grow, I'm safe." This doesn't happen very often. Now let's look at it the other way. Let's suppose the business starts dropping, right? You, as a very scared owner, are looking at the end of a tunnel where there's an oncoming train towards you, which is bankruptcy, right? You start getting scared. You say, "Oh my God, last year I made $1 million. This year I'm making $500,000. I'm probably going to be broke by next year if I don't do something, and I don't know what to do." So that's when you give me or any of my friends, other brokers, a call and say, "Dude, I got to sell this business because I'm terrified. I don't know, it's going down." And we put it on the market, and guess what? The buyer doesn't want to buy it, and you want to sell it. Not a good deal, not a good idea. And this is driven by the seller's fear. So this happens in any market, to any person, for any trend that you follow. So I have a very good friend and also a mentor. His name was Mario Ferradosa. And way back when I was a kid, 26, 27 years old, Mario was teaching me how to do forecasting. And I, being a nerd that I am, I kept using, Excel. And at that time, we didn't have Excel. We had Lotus 1-2-3. I don't know if anybody remembers that. And trying to do all this trend analysis. And he says, "Claudio, truth is that trying to forecast the future using past trends is like trying to drive looking at the rear view mirror." Okay. And it's absolutely true. And it took me lots of money lost in the market to actually give my friend Mario Ferradosa the, telling him that he was right. Unfortunately, he's always been right. He's much smarter than I am, and he didn't lose that much money in the market like I did. But anyway, the illusion of trends actually can make your business more valuable. Of course, the buyers that are in this webinar already know this, but many other don't, and people can be fooled by the trends, okay? So let's talk a little bit about randomness and the human brain again. There's this quote, I think is one of the best quotes I've ever heard about the markets. And basically, it's Will Rogers, who was a comedian. He says, the markets will go up and down, but not necessarily in that order. Now, I have a great quote or a great joke as well on randomness, and that's from Dilbert that I love. You know, over here we have our random number generator, and the random number generator says 99999, and Dilbert asks, "Are you sure that's random?" And that's the problem with randomness; you can never be sure. Okay. So if anybody has read the book Black Swans, Black Swan is an event that's going to affect the future that you have not expected, and it's extremely improbable to happen, but it does happen. So in that book, Black Swan, there's a part here that says that it's very interesting that I thought I would bring it, is the same condition that makes us simplify pushes us to think that the world is less random than it actually is. And we believe that the world is much more organized than it actually is. That's what it says here. And we also believe that there are trends that will continue in the future. Those two things actually are illusions that if you know about them, you can use them to your advantage. So let's summarize this so far before we go to the next part of the presentation. I hope I didn't lose too many people. I hope you're still awake. And if you're not and you need a coffee or something, let me know, okay? Oh, I have a Q&A. Oh, you're welcome, Michael. Good to see you here. Okay, so summary so far. Okay, let's see where we are. If I can get back to this. First, number one, your fortune actually relies on your earnings. You know that today's earnings, but you don't know the future risks. You're a human, at least I hope so, and your buyers are human. Therefore, humans are driven by greed and fear. You humans try to make sense of randomness and illusionary trends. Most people sell at the wrong time for the reasons that I just explained. You are not most people. And let me say that again. Most people sell at the wrong time, but you are not most people. So let's continue that. What does this all mean? It really means that if you're making $1 million or more and you have at least 10% profitability, you already are a winner. And so what? You're saying, well, Claudio, okay, I am a winner. So what? Well, let's see. We said that you can be on the race or you can finish the race. If you're not there, well, then you shouldn't really think of selling your business yet, unless you have to. You should look for that $1 million or more, because that's when you're going to get paid the most. And again, that's when the real, the big kids at the table are going to want to look for you. But if you are there, you should make sure that you at least think strongly of selling your business before it's too late. Either way, you have to get ready to sell the business, because we said it before, most people sell the business not when they want to, but when they have to, which would put you somewhere in the left side of this screen. If you're on the right side of the screen, you're already, ready to sell. So you're going to be in a much better position. So either way, you have to get ready to sell your business. So what does get ready to sell your business actually mean? First, don't think like the business owner, think like the business buyer. Change the way you think. Your buyers do not think like you do. And I'm going to show you that that's the case. So how does a buyer think? Number one, what is he buyer? What is a buyer buying when he buys your business? And this is not a tongue twister. First of all, he's going to buy profits and cash flow. Second of all, he's going to buy some future opportunity. Nobody buys a business to keep it. Well, some people do, but most people don't. That those are called the lifestyle businesses. I actually own one, so I shouldn't say that nobody does it. But most people buy it for a future opportunity. So they buy your profits today because they think they can make more money in the future. And of course, because they can continue with the business, right? So a business that is actually 100% based on you as a person is not going to be a business that has continuity. Therefore, it's going to have a lower multiple. What is a buyer actually not buying? And just said it a minute ago, they're not buying you. I'm sorry to break it to you, but you're not that important. It's your business what's important. Of course, there's nuances to this. If you're a young guy and you have a strong business and you have strong business acumen, many times the buyer is going to want you as part of the transaction for a few years or so. But the truth is that a business is a business when the owner is not in the business, but on the business. So buyers will typically look for a business that can run without you. Unproductive assets, okay? The fact that you have 20 trucks and 5 dumpsters, and it doesn't really matter if they're not productive. What matters is how much cash flow those assets actually create. So it's not a matter of how many nice trucks you have, how many offices you have, but how much money those assets produce. And they're not buying unwanted liabilities, and that's why most of the time the business transactions are on asset based and not stock based. What is the buyer afraid of? Your buyer is very afraid of uncertainty. He's also very afraid of hidden liabilities. And what is that buyer excited about? Making money, number one, strengthening the business, number two. So if you think about this from the buyer's point of view, there's many things that you should start thinking about your business to start changing it. And we're going to go deeper into this in the next few slides. The most important thing that you have to think of, and this is a really good conversation again that we had with my now new friend, Patrick Carr, is you really need to think what makes your company unique, okay? And that's going to be part of your marketing strategy when you market your company. And by the way, a marketing strategy to market a company is very similar to a marketing strategy to sell a service or to sell a product. You really need to find what makes your company unique and why would somebody want to buy your company. And I'm going to give you, again, the same comment I did before. It's not you, it's the company. That's what the buyer is looking for. The cash flow, future opportunity, business continuity, that's what they're looking for, okay? But your company is also unique, and it might be more valuable to one buyer than another. And this is very important because once you find the uniqueness of your company, then you can find who the right buyer for your company is. And we're going to talk about right buyers also later on today. So you need to think like your buyers thinks. This is the way you typically will look at your business. You're going to look at the sales and marketing, your operations and expenses, and sometimes you will think about profits. As long as you're making money, you're really not thinking about those profits. That happens all the time. When I talk with business owners and I ask about sales and marketing, they spend hours telling me how great their marketing is, how beautiful their sales look, how they do their operations and so forth. But then I say, hey, well, how much money did you actually make last year? And this is what I get: deer in the headlights. Nobody, or no, I wouldn't say nobody, but many business owners don't have an idea of what their profits are. The answer is, hey, ask my accountant. I don't know. Oh, I know I can pay for my stuff. I know I can buy a new boat. I know I got a new truck. I know I got a new house, but I really don't know how much I make because I do all my accounting just to make sure that I don't pay taxes, or I pay as little taxes as possible. So that's what the business owner looks like, thinks like. Now, here's the problem. This is the buyer's view of the business. The first question that the buyer asks is the last question that the seller responds, which is, how much money did you make? And if you make money, then I'm interested to find out, okay, about your operations, expenses, sales, marketing, and all the reasons why you make that profit. But if you don't make any profits, it's very, very likely that I will pass your company and go somewhere else. And if you can't explain how you make that profit and how much that profit is, forget it. You're not going to get a good deal out of your company, no matter how good the company is. So, like I said before, number one, think like your buyer thinks. Number two, take care of the essentials. And here I'm wondering, if I talk about essentials, what are essentials in your business? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it email marketing, affiliate marketing? Is it the latest technology? Is it AI? Or is the latest shiny object that shows somewhere and you have some internet guru telling you about? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. None of that is the essentials. All of that is really important to have. But there's one thing that is very, very important that I would say most business owners don't pay attention to. Okay. And the reason why they don't pay attention is because it's boring. Okay. Marketing is exciting. Sales are thrilling. Operations are your day to day. But what I'm going to tell you about is boring and nobody wants to talk about. And that is bookkeeping. Now, I can see your faces on the other side, even though I can't see you. You're like, come on, Claudio. Are you kidding me? Bookkeeping? Really? What are you talking about? I mean, I just delegate that to some guy that, I pay him $500 and he does my bookkeeping. Well, let's think about bookkeeping for a second. And we can see bookkeeping as the first part of the accounting, which will turn into financial analysis. And guess what? What are your buyers going to look for? Financial analysis. And if your bookkeeping is crap in, crap out, multiplied at the end, and there's no financial analysis that can be done with a company that doesn't keep the records straight. So by failing in the most boring part of the business, by failing in the most basic part of the business, by not paying attention to the bookkeeping, what can happen is that the whole deal can be off. So think about this for a minute. You've been spending all this time, and I'm not saying it's not important, okay? Don't take it that way. It's very important to do all the rest. It's very important to sell. It's very important to do marketing and everything else. But if you're not paying attention to your bookkeeping, you can't present the right financial analytics for a buyer to actually buy your business. So I have done a lot of research in my life, and I've gone back to all the deals that I had, and I said, okay, well, what percentage of the businesses that I actually sold have perfect records at the time of sale? And the percentage is exactly 0. I have never seen a business that was actually ready to sell and all their books were in order and they had everything perfect and the owner knew how much the money they were making. I really haven't seen any owner that can tell me I made, I don't know, $5,234 last month, because it's just not happening. So if you want to be different than the rest and sell your business for more money, make sure that when you finish this, you start thinking about that bookkeeping, okay? So let's go to the next one. Understanding the process, okay? And this is a typical process. Now, I'm not going to go into this because this could actually be not only another webinar, this could be a whole, class, months of this. But there's a few things here that we need to look at. And, it starts with you being ready to sell, business being ready to sell, which we just said none of them are. But at the end here, you're going to have negotiation, QOV, due diligence, and closing. Okay, so after you receive the offers, you're going to be doing some negotiation, and eventually you're going to go into QE and due diligence. That is the riskiest part of this whole process, okay? And unfortunately, about 50%, I'm sorry, I got to move a little bit. About 50% of the business deals die in this part of the process, the QOV and the due diligence. And the reason why they die is because the business owner wasn't prepared enough to get to that point. This is where the buyer actually will strip you naked and turn you around, up and down and sideways, and try to find every little mole in your skin, like a dermatologist would. They're going to try to find every little issue in your uh, company. And if there's skeletons in there, I can guarantee you they're going to find them. And everything is going to go down the drain. So to be ready to sell, you need to be ready to go through due diligence and quality of earnings. You need to have all your papers in order. You need to know exactly what's going on in your business. And you also need to be prepared mentally and psychologically for this part of the deal. Your buyers are going to ask a million questions, and sometimes the same question 5 times, just changing a word here and a word there. And that's very taxing, very, very, very uh, very stressful for the seller, because the seller thinks, oh my God, this guy doesn't really believe in me. He thinks I'm a crook. Why is he asking all these questions? Well, the truth is that they're putting a lot of money into your company, and they want to make sure that they're buying the right company. So there's a lot of questions there, and that's when 50% or more of the deals actually fall through. Now, why am I saying that it's the riskiest part of the deal? Is because after you sign an LOI, you are stuck with the seller, and you can't really market your business to anybody else. So you take your business off the market for 60 to 90 days. Your seller is your buyer is looking for every single issue that you might have, and nobody can actually make another offer for you. So you waste 60 to 90 days if this deal doesn't go through. But on the other hand, you're going to be spending money, because you're going to be paying attorneys, and you're going to be paying accountants, and you're going to be paying other professionals, and your time and your people's time to do all this, and maybe nothing happens. So you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money. And the last reason why this is very, very risky is because, let's suppose your buyer, for some reason, decides not to buy your business, and your business goes back into the market. So me as a broker, I got to call back your buyers and say, hey, your business is back in the market. What do you think the buyer is going to ask? How confident is he going to be on your business once you've gone through somebody else's due diligence and you haven't passed it? Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be impossible to sell your business, but what I am saying is it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and it's going to take a little bit more convincing, and probably show more proof that your business is sound. So don't go into the QOV, don't go into the due diligence, don't sign an LOI, because that's a predecessor to all this, without being sure that your business is 100% bulletproof, or at least 80% bulletproof. And that's why my process actually includes a pre-due diligence, and you can see it on the right side after business valuation. And I make sure that I get all the data. I'm not an accountant, but I look for things that I know that are there, and try to minimize your exposure to this risk. Okay, again, it's not the death of the cell, but it's a pretty big blow. So you need to understand the process and what goes into each one of those little buckets there. So one of the things that I do with my clients is I walk them through each one of them, and I make sure that they understand, if we're in the middle of the business valuation, what the pre-due diligence will look like. If we're there, what the strategy will look like, and so forth and so forth. It's very important that you understand that. The next part is understand the lingo. And this is, remember that I told you I had a business called the American Way. Well, American Way was actually an English teaching institute. So I've been a language teacher for many, many years. And I love teaching, and I love teaching languages. Well, here is a situation where we actually have two languages. They're both in English, right? But it's two different languages. You have your language as a business owner, and the buyers have their language as more financial and analytical kind of people, right? So it's a two different worlds. And we had, again, great conversations today with Patrick about the different types of buyers and the approaches. I'm not going to get into that today. Again, it's as you can see, I'm going through a lot of stuff today. All of this can be expanded to actually focus on different parts of this webinar. But at the end of the day, going back to this, you understand the lingo. Why do you need to understand the lingo? For two reasons. The first one is to know what they're asking you when they're asking you stuff, and the other one to sound like you know what you're talking about. It's great when there's a meeting between the buyer and the seller, and the buyer actually asks questions that the seller asks questions from the buyer that shows the buyer that you know what you're talking about, because that's going to help the multiplier, believe it or not. The buyer will understand that you know what you're saying, you know what you're talking about, and it's not that easy to just fool you. So some of the lingo, these are some of the different acronyms, lingo, and so forth that you really need to know. Of course, I'm not going to go into this today. And again, if I'm selling your business, I am going through all this and explain each one of them, how they work and so forth. Very important that you understand them. Very important that you sound very educated with your buyer. And it's not that you're uneducated. It's just that these acronyms are specifically for that are used by the buyers. You know your business inside and out, and that's what you've been looking and working on for the last 20, 30 years. That's fine. But at this point, you're playing in a different playing field, and you really need to show how much you know about it. So understand the lingo is the next thing. Know what to ask the buyers, what questions you want to ask the buyers. And let's see what questions you want to ask the buyers. First, how much money do you have, assets under management? What other companies have you bought? Feedback from other sellers, investment strategy, philosophy, culture. Is it are they doing a buy and hold? Are they going to take care of your people? Are they not? Do they care about your company? Very, very important. How do they do this quality of earnings and due diligence? How long does it take to close the deal? Remember, this part is the most risky part, or the riskiest part of the deal. You want to spend as little time as possible there. So how long it takes them to close the deal is a really important question. Out of all the LOIs that you presented, how many have you closed? What percentage have you closed? So all these are questions that you should ask the buyers. These are just some of them. Again, the more questions you ask, the more the buyer will understand that they're dealing with somebody that knows what they're doing. So we go through, you need to know what to ask the buyers. The next one is a team. Okay, so this is the situation today. Your buyer probably has 100, 200, 500, $1 billion in assets. They have hundreds of people in their company. They have lawyers, they have attorneys, they have assistants, they have analysts, they have tons of people, resources, and money. And you have your company that's probably a really good company, 10, $20 million, but you're not even close to sometimes how big these guys are. So basically fighting against Goliath. Now, this can only really be successful in the Bible. In real life, you can't do it alone, okay? Because you've sold your business maybe once or twice, unless you're one of those serial entrepreneurs who actually make their life out of selling business. Most people will sell their business once or twice in their whole life. But these guys are buying businesses for a living. They buy 1, 2, 10, 20, 30 businesses a year or more, okay? So they have their process down to a T, while you're trying to learn what EBITDA and adjusted EBITDA is and what the difference is between both of them, right? So you don't want to go against this alone. You really need a team. And what does a team look like, okay? Number one, you need a lawyer. And I'm not talking about your divorce lawyer. I'm talking about an M&A lawyer, somebody that really understands the nuances of a deal. And I can guarantee you that a good lawyer will make you save money. in the long run. They're not inexpensive, of course, because they're very specific, but they will make you save money and, you know, reduce liabilities tremendously. Sometimes they can even, you know, save the deal. Now, the important thing with the lawyers is that they have to be lawyers, not only M&A lawyers, but lawyers that actually are interested in closing the deal. Okay. Sometimes some lawyers are not that interested in closing the deal and it takes forever. You know, they're more concerned. I mean, they're not against the deal. They're just more concerned about the T's and C's and all that. And, you know, not so much closing the deal. So you got to find the right lawyer that works with you. Second is an accountant. Again, accountants, you know, your accountant is probably not going to be the perfect accountant for this, as good as an accountant as he can be. You know, if you've been having your books, you know, your bookkeeper keeping your books wrong for all these years, that's probably not the accountant that you want to have. You want an accountant that actually can discuss with the accountant of the buyer uh, things like, for example, working capital, which is part of the negotiation. Okay, in inventory and how you treat certain aspects of your P&L and your balance sheet. Okay, it's not the same accountant. These accountants again are used to dealing with private equity and with investors. Number three, tax advisors. You don't, well, I mean, you might want to get all your money to Uncle Sam, and you know, if that's what you want to do, that's great. I wouldn't advise it. And there's a lot of different tax strategies that you can implement, but you need to do it at the beginning. None of this can be done the last 2 days of the deal. All of this has to be done at the beginning. And that's why, you know, when I work with my clients, I introduce them to different tax advisors, different lawyers, different accountants. And if you have your own tax advisors or whatever, that's fine. But you want to have the team ready to go before you get those offers on the table, because it takes time to prepare all this. Finally, a wealth management. And this is another conversation. Yeah, thanks, Patrick. You helped me a lot in putting this deal to this webinar together, because I had a long conversation about something that happened in Argentina many, many years ago. And it has nothing to do with selling a business. It has to do with getting a lot of money at once. And it's really sometimes very hard to manage getting a lot of money at once if you're used to receiving, you know, decent amount of money, but, you know, over the period of time. And you really need to understand that, you know, once you have all that money in your pocket, you need to know what to do, especially in an economy like ours, where we have such a huge inflation. And, you know, if you're not used to inflation like I am, I come from a country where we had 10, 20, 30% a month in inflation. So we have all these strategies to manage our cash and make sure that we don't lose against inflation. But I know the US is not really, you know, you've had a good economy in the past, not too much inflation. So people are not used to managing money in inflationary times. So you really need a wealth management. And of course, you need your friendly business broker to help you. So again, hiring a professional team, your M&A attorney, M&A accountant, M&A advisor, tax professional, and wealth manager. That is the appropriate team to help you deal with private equity. And believe me, I believe that you know, the people from private equity will want to you to have a good team, because there's nothing like having a deal with both parties know what they're doing. When one of the parties, you know, is kind of playing it by the ear, or, you know, uh, shooting from the hip, and the other party is professional and knows what they're doing, horrible things happen for both parties. So in general, I found that a buyer, a private equity, will appreciate very much that you have a good team that will work with them. So let's continue with steps to sell and how to get ready to sell. The next one is to have a strategy to attract more buyers, okay? And I have this conversation a million times a month with a million roofing business owners. I wish it was a million. It's not that many, but you get the point. I got an email from somebody saying that they want to buy my business. Why do I even want to hire you for this? Well, I just told you why you need a team, and it's not the same when you're actually working with somebody that's working with you versus somebody that's working with the buyer. Okay, and by the way, there's brokers that work with the buyers, and that's fine. But if a broker is working with the buyer, he's working with the buyer. He's not working with you. He's getting paid by the buyer, and he's going to be, a little bit more biased toward him. Although, we're always at arm's length, but it's human nature, right? He's getting paid by the buyer, not by you. So he's not going to be so keen to defend you. So number one, make sure that you have a team, and that team works for you and not the buyer. And then you can put different types of strategies. And if you have a buyer calling you and they want to buy your business, and you just sell to that buyer, well, guess what? You missed out on an opportunity of knowing if you were going to get paid more by somebody else, right? So you need to shop around buyers. You need to attract more buyers. And the best way to attract more buyers is to have a solid strategy that will reach out to those buyers, explaining to them why they would want to buy your business. What is the uniqueness of your business, that your business is really well prepared to be sold, that all your books are in order, that you have all your documentation ready, that your processes are well written and they're in a binder or something, and that the business has X, Y, and Z opportunities for the future. Of course, there's not one business that it's 100% perfect, and I don't think the buyers would like that because they can't add any value if that's the case, right? But if we present to a buyer the reason why your business is a must buy for them, and we provide them with the reasons for them to buy them, then having more buyers actually means getting more offers, which means increasing that famous multiplier. Okay, so basically, you want to be the prettiest girl in the room. All the buyers need to be courting you, just like the bachelorettes. Okay, you want not one, not two. You want as many buyers as possible to want your business, because if they do, the more buyers we have, the higher the price that you are going to sell. So in a nutshell, think differently. In a nutshell, think of your price as bringing into the present future earnings. Think of your business as a product that will be sold to a client. There are no future trends. They are illusions of your brand. If your buyers are greedy, this is not the time to hold on. Get ready to sell. Focus on your bookkeeping, accounting, financial information, because that's the first thing that they're going to ask. Learn the language of your buyers. Vet your buyers. Don't just jump into an LOI with anybody. Make sure that you know who they are and how they're going to bring value to your business. I have never seen a business owner that sold the business just because he wanted the money. Most business owners that I know, of course, they want the money, but they're also very concerned and very focused on keeping their legacy and keeping their employees and giving opportunities to their employees. So I'm sure you're one of those. So you want to make sure that your buyers actually will keep your legacy alive, and they're not going to do like if you remember the movie Wall Street in the 80s, where they bought companies for the assets and they dismantled them. Well, you don't want that to happen to your company. You work too hard, too much, and you put all you have in that company. So you want to make sure that whoever buys it respects that. Okay, gather a strong team and have a plan. So my friends, if we do all this, today your life as a roofer could eventually become a life as a retired millionaire. And to do this, make sure that we walk together through the path less traveled. Okay, do not follow the path where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trace. That's from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and that is my webinar. Thank you so much for being here. Does anybody have any questions? Do you want to raise your hand or start a conversation? questions, comments, concerns? Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Jason says, great job. Jeff, I just want to say that was so amazing and informative. Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure working with you and knowing you. I appreciate it so much. Great work. Thanks for sharing, Adam. Thank you, Adam. One question I have is how often are financials messed up? Question 99%. I think you're being conservative on that one. The truth is that they're really messed up most of the time. And the reason for that is because people don't pay attention to them until they sell. So yes, they're messed up most of the time. You're welcome, Ryan. Michael, thank you. Great job, great info. Is this recorder can we access? Yes, George, it is recorded. I'm going to be sending it to you later. And I'm also going to be sending a questionnaire because I'm going to be expanding on many of the things that I talked about today. I think there's a lot of value of doing, deep dives into some of these. So yes. Do you ask buyer for proof of funds and what kinds do you accept? Oh, that's a great question, Carlos. Well, it depends on the buyer. If it's a private equity buyer, I typically already have the information of the assets under management that they have and what have you. If it's an individual, yes, we do ask for proof of funds. Typically, it would be either a financial statement or copies of their statements, bank statements, or what have you. Okay, Michael, got it. Good luck, Claudia. You are a huge asset for these owners. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Uh, James says, thank you. Very informative and insightful. Thank you. Another question I have here is how long should a company be in business before considering selling if they in fact do over $1 million in revenue and do 10% profit in the first year or two? Stephen, typically you would like the company to be at least 3 years on the market just to start showing, trends and showing the buyers that, you're not a fly by night. So that's the best thing. 3 or more, it's the best. Christian says, if I'm running my roofing company daily, how do I get myself out of the day-to-day to make it sellable? Wow, that's a huge question. It's not that easy to answer in 2 minutes, but basically you have to work on making yourself obsolete and finding the right people and hiring the right people. Many times because you're strapped in cash, you don't pay enough because you're beginning. Oh, and we can talk about cash flow for a whole day, and depending on the life stage of the business. But at the beginning, it's very hard because you need cash to make cash. You need to pay good salaries to find people that are going to replace you. It's not anybody that will. What is the best way to find a good bookkeeper? I know a few bookkeepers, but ask them, make sure that you ask the questions how long they've been doing bookkeeping. Check that they do, check other people's reports on them and what have you. And there are good bookkeepers that I know that I can introduce you to as well. George says, thank you very much for sharing your expertise. You're welcome. What seller financing? Good question, Carlos. Again, that would be part of the structure of the deal. Most buyers do want at least some seller financing because they want what it's called skin in the game from the seller financing. Of course, you can refuse to it, but that's going to maybe minimize the chances of you to selling. And it's all negotiable. Everything is negotiable. Wayne says, excellent presentation. Thank you. Was logical, informative, and all made sense. In your presentation, you answered questions I would have had. I'm so glad I did, Wayne. Appreciate it. Let me see. Continue here. Carlos, Wayne. Okay. Oh, the million in revenue. No, I meant million in net, not gross, net earnings. That's when the big kids are starting to look at you. Would you say the economy is slowing the buyers down a bit for fear of the market? And would you recommend, if the owner is considering selling, that he reach out to you sooner rather than later? And is it about the 90-day process? Yes, even if you don't want to sell, I welcome having a conversation with you. And I can give you some pointers to be ready. Like I said, most people sell their business not because they want to, but because they have to. And that is a problem. If you're not ready for it, you're in the worst of all, worlds. You have to sell your business and you're not prepared for it. So this is kind of like what happens with insurance. Nobody wants to pay insurance, but when you need it, if you haven't paid for it, hey, you're in trouble. Same thing here. You don't want to sell your business, but if you're not ready for sell it and you have to sell it, you're in big trouble. When you use the multiplier, how many years are you looking at? Past 3 years? Most of the people look at past 3 years and they do an average, and there's a different average. There's different ways in the years. Like you could say, for example, 20% for the first year, 40% the second year, and 40% the first year, or something like that. You can do that. Thank you. I am going to send you an email with some more specific questions. No worries, Adam. I'm here for that. I appreciate it. Stephen, thank you for the presentation. Claudio, time to learn the buyer's lingo. Yeah, that's fun. And being an English teacher, I love teaching languages. So, guys, I appreciate it. It's 8 o'clock and almost 8 o'clock. So, if nobody has any more questions, I really, really appreciate your time. I hope this is the beginning of a good relationship. You have my email, you have my phone number, you have even if you want, my personal address. I have no problem. And if you're down in South Florida anytime, you can always reach me and we can go for a beer or for lunch or an ice cream, whatever you guys want. Okay. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Bye bye.